Herschel, you gotta be careful. Like, unless you do some research. And he says, I'm gonna chase the car. So we have had a few EB110s over the years. I remember when we bought our first Bugatti EB110, they were almost unsellable at the time. The car struggled between a few auctions. I fell in love with it. We had just opened Curated, and I thought, what a better way than a Bugatti Blue EB110. I think at the time they were $600,000-$700,000, and I thought it was incredibly undervalued. Very special car in terms of history and provenance, but they're very temperamental cars, and the history of Bugatti during those periods is so controversial, so insane. The registry is like, no one really knows what cars are real, what cars are dowers, and I think the world now is trying to understand the cars. And it's wild what they've done in the past few years. They really have exploded. And it does make sense. I mean, we're talking about one of the most important brands, automotive brands in the world. And in many ways, this is a car that inspired the Veyron and the Chiron and the future of Bugatti for many, many years. So Herschel is essentially originally had his own company that was just working with Curated and was doing a ton of deals. And we realized the crossovers were so the same, and we figured we had to join forces. So we ended up partnering together. But Herschel's a guy that is a bulldog, and he's digging, and he's looking, and he's searching. And I think in his career, he sold something like 23, 24 F50s. So it's absolutely insane. I think at one point he had sold 17 LaFerraris. So when it comes to hypercars and supercars, he's an important figure in our community. We have always been chasing these cars, and about a year ago, Herschel basically came to us and said, I think I found a missing EB110. I said, listen, you got to be very, very careful with these cars because there were dour cars, and there's cars that might have been made from parts and all these different things. So, if it's not on the registry, you have to know exactly what you're looking for. And he said, no, it's basically a brand new car with 300 kilometers. And I said, listen, I've never heard of this. Let's check the registry. So immediately we go to the registry and we're going through each car, and for some reason, this car doesn't exist. It shows it was an unfinished car as an EB110 SS in Bugatti blue over the gray interior, which, I mean, if you know EB110s, and SS is the very rare version, one of 33 cars. It was the bigger turbos, fixed wing, just more of the aggressive version with carbon in the interior. And Bugatti blue is probably the best color for that car. So really incredible car, but it's not on the registry. Herschel, you gotta be careful. Like, unless you do some research. And he says, I'm gonna chase the car. So at the time, we were actually buying and selling a lot of cars back and forth between Europe, a 275 GTB4, and some really very spectacular cars. And Herschel was basically back and forth to Italy, and he said, listen, I'm going to go there. I'm basically going to sort of dig through the history. I'm going to try to meet with the guys from B Engineering, and I'm going to figure out what this EB110 is. So if you don't know the history of Bugatti, basically an Italian playboy and industrialist, along with Ferruccio Lamborghini, Paolo Stanzani, had the idea to rebirth the Bugatti brand. And they brought together some of the best engineers in the world, some of the best designers. If you look at the roster, from 1990 to 1991, it was the best of the best from Italy. And it was an incredible car, four-wheel drive, carbon fiber tub, V12 quad turbo, and it really shook the supercar world. Now, depending who you ask, if you ask Roman Artioli, which we almost have to believe, he basically feels like he was muscled out, and the banks pulled his loans because of the competition potentially to Ferrari or Lamborghini. And he feels like the sort of, I don't know if you'd call it the mafia, was actually involved in basically the bank shutting Bugatti down. And they produced about 100 cars before one day, literally, the bank came in and shut them down. And it was a pretty bad dissolvency. A lot of people are still angry about it. But this dissolvency apparently lasted, there was, terms over like 20-something years like that. So after bankruptcy, Dower actually went in and bought what was left of the final Bugattis that weren't finished. And they finished making the cars between like 97 and 99. So, they are real EB110s. They have the parts, they have the chassis numbers, but they were finished later. So I think, with a Dower car, the value is going to be probably a little bit less than an original car. I mean, it's still an EB110. It's still all the same parts. It was just put together at a later point. And around that time that Dauer was finishing those cars, that's when Volkswagen Audi Group came in and purchased Bugatti, and then later would create and develop the Veyron, and then now today the Chiron, making it probably one of the greatest hypercars of this generation. Apparently, a few of the guys would later leave, Jean-Marc Borel and a few other people that were involved. They were directors at Bugatti and engineers, and they would start B Engineering. And B Engineering today is basically who keeps all the records for the Bugattis. They've documented all the cars. They have all the original records. They have a ton of original parts. We've worked with them before, and they really understand these cars really well. The reality is that's about it. There's another Bugatti registry, but they don't have all the cars. He's done an incredible job for what he has, but that's about it. So, I told Herschel he needs to talk to B Engineering. He needs to talk to a few people in Italy and really understand. So he flies to Europe, and he goes to inspect this car, and there it is. It's basically a brand new car. It's gorgeous, 300 kilometers. He decides that he's got to dig into this. This is a car that we must have, we must sell, or be part of its history at least. He ends up meeting with the guys from B Engineering. Now, at the time, we actually had a film crew following him to film a totally another project, and the film crew actually interviewed the guys at B Engineering, and the story is absolutely insane of this car. So what happened during production in that terrible time was they were literally had orders. They had a ton of orders for SS's, race cars, all these things, and then the bank came in and just shut them down. There was a lot of unfinished cars, there was parts, there was all these different things, and apparently, like most production facilities with research and development, there were a few cars left at dealers, there were a few cars left at suppliers. Apparently there's one car that was left in the US for EPA testing. It hasn't been seen, or maybe it's been seen, I don't know. But one of the cars was left at a supplier, basically almost finished for testing. It was something to do with like engine management or something like that. And the supplier wanted to get paid, but he couldn't get paid because of this insolvency. But the guys at B Engineering sort of knew where the car was, and they knew this car had been left behind. It was a brand new car. It needed a few things to be finished, and the car was basically forgotten about. I believe there was some laws based on, forgiveness laws, and 20-something years later, the guys at B Engineering they settle up the debts owed on the car, and they basically find this car, rediscover this brand new car, and bring it back to its glory. So this car had been missing for so many years, and it was a new car just sitting. And they basically, clean it up and, finish it. And it was basically sitting in our hands in front of Herschel. Now, we ended up selling it very, very quick. It went to a collector with incredible cars, 959S, stuff like that. But what's wild is looking back, I think this is something that, to find something like this is so rare and it's so intriguing. But there are these gems and unicorns that are still around the world. There are rumors of another EB110, similar situation. And there's even rumors today, of interesting Lamborghinis that are the same situation. So it's only a matter of time before the world discovers these cars. But that is the story of the lost Bugatti EB110 SS.
Buying a used car, especially sight unseen, can be a very scary process, and you should never do that without getting the car inspected first. And the best and easiest way to have that done is using the Lemon Squad. They are an amazing resource that can almost immediately inspect a car for you anywhere in the country. They have no hidden fees, they're the largest company in the industry, and they have the fastest response times in the industry. So check them out now at the link in the description below. You can use the code VinWiki for a 10% discount. It is the best way not only to find out if you're being scammed, find out if the car is a piece of garbage, and to make sure that you're buying exactly the car that you're looking for. So next time you buy a car, make sure to use the Lemon Squad.